Every Magic the Gathering set has hidden gems, cards that are initially overlooked when a set first comes out, but over time people realize are actually amazing. These cards are known as sleepers, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 5 choices for Innistrad Midnight Hunt sleeper cards that are all currently selling for less than $1.
Magic. I am a wizard! History. I'm an old wizard! The Magic Historian. My bones hurt.
Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well. We are here to talk about my top 5 sleeper picks for Innistrad Midnight Hunt. This video was actually caused by one card in particular that will be the #1 card on this list because my mind is blown by the fact that you can get this for $1 or less right now. But that actually goes for all of these cards to a more or less degree. Keep in mind, these are my personal choices. I will explain my reasoning and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. So we're going to start out with number 5 on my list of top 5 sleepers that are less than $1 from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. And the first card is Triskaidekaphile. So Triskaidekaphile is 1 blue and 1 for a 1/3 human wizard. It says you have no maximum hand size. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 13 cards in your hand, you win the game. And 1 blue and 3, draw a card. The flavor text is amusing. It says she's always willing to lend a hand, it just won't be hers. And the artwork is pretty silly, I have to admit. I do like the hands of the clock that's behind her pointing at literal hands. This is clearly a maniac, and this concept does fit well into the world of Innistrad. We do have these mad flesh scientists in existence. Now, the reason that I have chosen Triskaidekaphile as one of these sleeper cards is a number of reasons. First of all, cards that say you have no maximum hand size do pretty well on their own. This is a card that says you have no maximum hand size and allows you to draw cards. That all by itself is fairly attractive to me. This is a card that will definitely already be going into my queue. But then when you stack on the fact that it has its own built-in win condition, that's where it really moves up the chain, because there are a lot of cards in Magic the Gathering. We're talking like 25,000 different game pieces. I don't know any other game, at least in physical games. I mean, digital games, you can have an infinite amount of items. But anyways, I don't know many games or any other games that have that many different moving pieces. So manipulating yourself around to having 13 cards in your hand isn't that difficult a proposition. And we've seen a number of alternate win con cards just kind of like inch up over time. So to me, this is a definite choice for a sleeper. However, since it is number 5, it is the weakest choice out of the current list. The one that I have the least faith in overall, but still do believe that this will definitely end up as more than $1 card. They get stronger from here, okay? So, number 4 on my list is Suspicious Stowaway. And in all honesty, this one could easily be interchanged with number 3 because they're both about on the same level. But Suspicious Stowaway is a surprisingly solid and odd card. It's odd because it's a blue werewolf. That is not normal in Magic the Gathering, right? So Suspicious Stowaway is 1 blue and 1 for a 1/1 human rogue werewolf. Suspicious Stowaway can't be blocked. When Suspicious Stowaway deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card, and then it's got Daybound because it is indeed a werewolf. And when you flip it over to its other side and take a look at that, you have a 2/1 werewolf that can't be blocked, and on top of it just says draw a card when it hits your opponent. It's not discard then it's not draw then discard, it's just straight up card draw. And I do love the way that the artwork changes on the front from like the human kind of hiding around barrels to the back of the werewolf like, let's get crazy! Imagine that. Imagine being out on a ship at sea and all of a sudden you find out there's a stowaway, but it's a werewolf. And it's like, how did a werewolf get on our boat, bro? You know what I mean? It's got that kind of a vibe. But anyways, the logic that I have applied when choosing this card is it feels like a very strong control card. All right, you've got a creature, first of all, that can't be blocked. So you're going to be able to swing in with it every turn. And at the beginning, before you flip it over, you're going to get to do the draw and discard. So you're going to craft a better hand, but it's not very difficult to get it to its flipped side, right? Basically, how Daybound works is if a player casts no spells during their turn, then it gets flipped next turn. So if you're playing like a control deck, you're usually playing during your opponent's turn. So this card is most of the time going to be a 2/1 can't be blocked draw card. So it's going to be giving you more cards to control the board. And if your opponent wants to be able to flip it back over to its first side, they're going to have to place 2 spells in a turn. And if they're not drawing extra cards, they're only going to be able to do that for a couple turns at most. And you're most likely going to have drawn answers for that as well. So to me, this feels like a really solid control piece. Sure, it is a 1/1, so it is a bit fragile, but ultimately it feels like a card that can go the distance. And once you have it on the board, then you can still be countering your opponent's spells, right? Because it's literally like the way that Daybound Nightbound works is I have to cast no spells or I have to cast 2 spells. It's not like if you cast a spell and I cast a spell, it counts as 2 spells, right? So it's got the potential to keep it flipped to that one side very easily. That to me, it seems like a really good card, and I'm genuinely surprised it's under $1. So, like I said, this card and my number 3 choice are somewhat interchangeable. So let's take a look at number 3, and that is Rem Careless, who for some reason I want to call Rem Lazar. Anybody see that Red Letter Media video? Anyways, Rem Lazar! What is he again? He's Stalwart Slayer. That's a cool name. Stalwart Slayer. That could be a band name. Anyways, he is a legendary human knight. He has flying and haste. He says, if a spell would deal damage to you or another permanent you control, prevent that damage. All of it. It prevents all damage you'll be dealt to you or any other permanent other than Rem himself when it comes to like burn spells. And then on top of that, if a spell would deal damage to a opponent or a permanent opponent controls, it deals 1 more damage instead. So he works amazingly on a couple of different frontiers, right? First of all, he boosts up all of your burn spells. And when you read it on the card and you go, okay, it increases it by 1 damage. How big a difference is 1 damage? Well, I'll put it to you this way. Wizards of the Coast has no problem printing shock. 1 red for an instant that does 2 damage to any target. Now, Lightning Bolt is an instant 1 red, do 3 damage to any target. They consider that to be too strong for standard. So the difference of 1 damage point can actually be considerable. If you break down the math of it, if you have 20 life, then 1 life is 5% of your entire life total. And that percentage increases as your life total decreases. So adding like 1 point of damage on is nothing to sneeze at. But the fact that he prevents all damage to you and your other permanents allows you to play big, dumb burn spells that will hit everything. You can just go, you know what? I'm going to set the whole board on fire. But here's the thing, I'm actually not. I'm only going to be setting Rem on fire because I'm immune to it. All my guys are immune to it. Your guys are going to take the full burn plus 1 across the board. If you play a spell that hits all your opponent's creatures, it's going to add plus 1 across all of those, right? And the fact that Rem is legendary, obviously, in one way, is a detractor, right? Where you go, okay, you can only have 1 out. You can't really stack them out and go wild with it. But at the same time, that means that, like, you don't really have to care as much about sacrificing Rem when you cast a big spell that sets everything on fire, because you can just grab another Rem from your haste legendary, right? So it's like, oh, I have another one sitting in my hand. It's a blank unless, oh, look, he got destroyed. So off we go. Let's put it in another one. Also, he seems like he makes a pretty good choice as a commander. And I like the fact that right away he's swinging out with flying and haste, so you have a good chance of connecting with him. On top of a 2/3 body. Like, ultimately, he seems like a good card. Time will tell on it, but I feel like Rem, over time, is definitely going to be moving upwards. All right? So, let us turn to number 2 on the list, because this is where we really start to get into the cards that I can't believe they're this cheap. Ghoul Caller's Harvest. This card seems insane to me. All right, so this is 1 black and 1 green for a sorcery that says, create X 2/2 black zombie creature tokens with Decayed, where X is half the number of creature cards that are in your graveyard rounded up. All right, so this is making a ton of zombie tokens. Like that's how I view this. Because not only does it have that ability, it has flashback. It's only 2 mana to cast this. And if you have a bunch of creatures in your graveyard, you are generating a huge army. But even if you have like 3 creatures in your graveyard, it rounds up the half. So it would round it up to 2, and it would just make you 2/2/2s for 2 mana, which isn't too shabby. Now, yes, they do have Decayed, so you are going to lose the tokens. But ultimately, the value you're getting for this, the fact that you can do it twice, and the fact that, like I said earlier in the video, Magic the Gathering has a lot of cards, and there's a lot of different ways to feed your graveyard full of creatures. We've seen in recent times that graveyard decks, I mean, Hogak is in recent memory, right? Feeding your graveyard full of stuff is a time-tested tradition now in Magic the Gathering. It is not difficult to do, to go, boom, check it out. I got 20 creatures in my graveyard. Oops, I've got 10 2/2s. Wait a minute, I flashed it back. I've got 20 2/2s. Like, it's absolutely crazy that this thing has flashback, because even if you don't have it in your hand and you're playing spells to feed cards into your graveyard, it can flash back from your graveyard. Like, the only reason that I could see this being overlooked and never becoming a big thing is because there's just too many good cards for graveyard-based decks. But I don't buy it. 2 mana to get a huge army is amazing. And after playing against Decayed tokens, I feel comfortable saying that Decayed isn't as big a drawback as you would think. Decayed only triggers on attacking, and there are other things that you can do with tokens. So for me, the Ghoul Caller's Harvest is an incredible card, and the artwork is amazing as well. She's got like a ghoul horse that she's riding in front of her, like Ghoul Horde. It's like, bro, I found a ton of bodies and I'm raising them up and we're going to a kegger. Like, it's just absolutely awesome flavor. But next, now we have to talk about my number 1 choice. Now, this is the one that absolutely blows my mind. This is the card that birthed this video. Jadar, Ghoul Caller of Nephalia. Interestingly enough, my top 2 picks are both based on ghoul calling. Jadar is insane, and it may not be obvious at first when you look at him. All right, so Jadar, Ghoul Caller of Nephalia, 1 black and 1 for a 1/1 legendary human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, if you control no creatures with Decayed, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed. The flavor text says, "Rise, my pretty thing. Why rot in the river when you can serve at my bidding?" Talk about an amazing pickup line. And anyways, this card is absolutely bonkers. When you read it, oh, whatever, man, 2 mana for a 1/1. Who cares? Whoop-de-doo, he makes a little 2/2 decay token. He does it every single one of your turns. People are going to swing with those decayed tokens. They're going to trigger all kinds of, oh, look, whenever a creature comes out, I get this. Whenever a creature goes, I get this. I have played against this card multiple times, and it already has gone on my, like, as soon as it gets on the board, destroy it list. I remember when it first came out, the first time I saw it played, I was like, okay, that seems all right. And then I'm like, oh no, after a couple times of playing against it, I am fully convinced this card is absolutely bonkers. A guaranteed 2/2 every turn is way stronger than you would think. And Black has all these crazy spells right now where they can just sack a creature, draw 2 cards, sack a creature or a treasure, draw 2 cards. So you just feed these little dudes into the meat grinder like it was nothing. You have other cards that care about creatures dying in a turn. And then you can just use it with impunity. They don't matter. You can just whip the tokens into the meat grinder over and over and over. The value that this card provides for 1 black and 1 is absolutely bonkers. There is no reason on this earth that Jadar should be $1 or less. But that's the reality we're living in. Jadar, I'm calling it right now, #1 sleeper from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. I may be off base with some of the other choices. I may be wrong. Time may show, hey, you didn't know what you were talking about. But Jadar is amazing. The card is redonkulous. My #1 choice for card that is most overlooked. And I recommend that if you like these kind of cards, or even just want to have some cards that are going to go up in value, grab some Jadars, because I guarantee you further down the road, you're going to come back to me and say, bro, you were right. In fact, if you watch this video and you get Jadars and later down the road you're thankful for it, come back and tell me in the comment section, because there's nothing I love more than being right. So, thanks for coming by, my friends. I will see at least some of you tonight in the live stream. A big shout out to all my patrons. I'm going to leave a link to my newest Innistrad lore video on the screen for you to enjoy, and I will talk to you guys real soon.